Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. Today is Saturday, August 30th, day 694. 694 days since October 7th, 2023. Updates from the last 24 hours. 66 Palestinians have been killed in that period of time, including 15 who were killed while attempting to receive aid. That's according to the health ministry in Gaza. In addition, 345 Palestinians have been wounded in the attacks. At least 11 Palestinians, including children, were killed in an IDF airstrike on a bakery in Gaza City. 10 Palestinians, including 3 children, died in the last 24 hours due to malnutrition, according to the health ministry. In addition, an Israeli soldier, the 900th Israeli soldier, was killed in Gaza by a friendly fire incident in the south of Gaza. His name is Sergeant First Class Lubler. He was 34 years old. It's worth noting this is the second death in the past week or two that I've shared just in daily updates of an Israeli soldier killed by friendly fire. The percentage and number of Israelis killed by accidents or their own is incredibly high in the Gaza Strip. The IDF and Shin Bet Security Service announced that they struck a top Hamas spokesperson, Abu Obeida, in the western city of Gaza, or the western part of Gaza City. And so that was one of the deaths recently reported. Also, the body of Israeli hostage Idan Shtivi, who was murdered and abducted on October 7th during the Nova Music Festival, was just recovered in a joint IDF and Shin Bet operation. When the IDF recovered the slain hostage Idan Shtivi, it was said that it was the same operation that another hostage, Alon Weiss, was also recovered. It's just that the body of Idan was just identified by the Institute of Forensic Medicine in Israel. In a statement, the Hostage and Missing Families Forum said, "Bringing home the hostages is the only path to national healing and recovery. The people of Israel want to see all of the hostages returned home, some for rescue and rehabilitation, others for proper burial through a comprehensive agreement." It said that Shifty, this particular hostage, loved nature, photography, animals. He was about to begin his second year studying sustainability and government at Reichman University. He went to the Nova Music Festival on October 7th to photograph friends, but was caught in the Hamas attacks. According to the Family Forum, he helped a young man and woman he had just met escape the massacre, a selfless act that ultimately led to his abduction. With his return, that means that there are 48 hostages still held in Gaza. It's unknown how many might still be alive. Tens of thousands of Israelis protested all over the country today in Israel to call for a deal, to call for an end to the war on Gaza, to call for the release of hostages. They're especially appealing to US President Donald Trump. So they say that he has the only power to bring an end to this war. Those protests, in large part, marked the 1 year since the death of 6 Israeli hostages, in memory of the hostages who were murdered in Rafah by their Hamas captors a year ago. Their bodies were retrieved on September 1st of last year. Those hostages were Uri Danino, Carmel Gott, Hirsch Goldberg Poland, Alexander Lovanov, Almog Sarusi, and Aiden Yerushalami. The 6 hostages were killed as the Israeli troops had approached their tunnel. Demonstrators also highlighted the return of Alon Weiss's body and stressing that military pressure on Hamas kills hostages. A senior Israeli official said that the cabinet will not decide on an Gaza City offensive on Sunday, according to reports. They're saying that the IDF chief is being accused of dodging the invasion. You'll recall the IDF chief was opposed to the invasion in the cabinet meeting that voted for the approval several weeks ago. But there's not expected to be a new vote among the security cabinet. The official said that the chief of staff of the IDF, Samir, he said the decision was already made 2 weeks ago. We're entering Gaza. The fact that the chief of staff is trying to avoid it, that's on him. Moving on to other parts of the Middle East, this is really significant. In Yemen, the prime minister of the Houthi rebels was just killed in an airstrike on the capital of Yemen, Sana'a. This happened on Thursday. Several other ministers of the government were killed. According to Houthis, the strike targeted officials during a routine government meeting. The Houthi government is not formally recognized outside of the territories that it controls in Yemen. Thus, Prime Minister Ahmad Ghalib al-Rawi is therefore not acknowledged in the international community as the country's prime minister. Meanwhile, in the international community, the EU countries are divided about whether or not to impose sanctions on Israel because of the war in Gaza. The EU foreign ministers met today. They were deeply split over this issue. Some are calling for the EU to apply strong economic measures. Others are just I'm not clear that they're willing to go that far. One participant said she was not very optimistic that the ministers could even agree on the most lenient of proposals. It was less severe than other options. That proposal was to curb Israeli access to an EU research funding programs. Many EU governments have criticized Israel's conduct of the war, particularly over the death of civilians and restrictions on aid, but they're unable to agree on any impactful EU action or economic action. This is what I've been talking about, where a lot of countries are willing to give rhetoric saying that they oppose Israel's actions, but they're not willing to take actions in response. Countries including Ireland, Spain, Sweden, and the Netherlands have called for the suspension of an EU free trade pact with Israel, but there are allies of Israel that are standing in the way. Germany, Hungary, and the Czech Republic have rejected such steps. In the United States, there was a huge decision. The Trump administration is denying visas to the Palestinian Authority leaders who were set to come to the UN General Assembly. This meeting is going to be quite significant. Many countries, including France, are acknowledging Palestine as a future state, and President Abbas was denied his visa to the US. So this is a big deal. The U.S. has been denying and revoking visas from members of the PLO and the PA ahead of the UN General Assembly in September. According to officials or a statement, the Trump administration has been clear. This is the Trump administration saying this. It's in our national security interest to hold the PLO and PA accountable for not complying with their commitments and for undermining prospects towards the peace. Other U.S. updates. I'm not sure if I've talked previously about the case of Mohammed Ibrahim. He's an American teen who's also Palestinian and currently being held in Israeli prison. Ibrahim is a teenager from Florida, Palestinian-American teenager. He's being held in Israeli prison for allegations of throwing rocks at Israeli vehicles in the occupied West Bank. His family and human rights organizations have denied allegations. They say his detention is unjust. In February 2025, he was 15 years old, and Israeli soldiers raided his home in the West Bank village of Sawad, where he was visiting relatives. The soldiers blindfolded and handcuffed him. They took him into custody. He's been held on what's called administrative detention. That means without trial for several months at Ofer and Megiddo Israeli prisons. Though his family and advocacy groups state that the military court documents show Israeli authorities accuse him of rock throwing. His family and lawyer assert that the confession was obtained under duress without legal counsel. And there are further allegations that he's been abused and his health is deteriorating. He's reportedly lost a significant amount of weight and contracted scabies due to unsanitary conditions and medical neglect. His family have been denied visitation rights and telephone access. So this week in the U.S., there's been a huge increase of calls to U.S. members of Congress to call for the release of this American citizen who's being held without trial in Israeli military prisons. Al Jazeera reported and said he's just a normal kid, Mohammed Ibrahim. He loves his family, likes photography, but the Palestinian-American teenager spent his 16th birthday this past March in Israeli jail, despite protests pleading for his release. His father, Zahir, believes the U.S. government can free him and end this ordeal with a single phone call, given the billions of dollars of military aid they send to Israel each year. So that's an update of the last 24 hours. May God continue to go before us in our efforts. In the name of Christ.